organizing this incredible conference, as always. I'm very pleased and honored to be moderating the second panel today, which is dealing with cultural production. So I think probably a pivot in terms of the thematic focus, but still intersecting in important ways. So we have two of our panelists present and a third, George Dettermann. Jörg, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you very well. Can you hear me?
Yes, very well, thank you. And it's too bad, Dr. Dettermann, because we've crossed paths for like a couple of decades back when I was book review editor of the Journal of Arabic Literature. And so I thought we would meet finally. We've been known each other online. Right? So I'm Nate Greenberg, by the way. I'm in the Arabic program here at George Mason University, and a member of the Abu Suleiman Center. So let's look at the biographies briefly in order. We'll have first Dr. Dettermann, who is in Qatar, I believe. And
that's right.
Yes, okay, thank you. So, and are we introducing one by one or all together at the beginning?
One by one.
Okay. So Dr. Dettermann is professor in the Department of Liberal Arts and Sciences at Virginia Commonwealth University in Qatar. He also serves as associate editor of the Review of Middle East Studies and as book review editor of the Journal of Arabian Studies. He holds a doctorate from the School of Oriental and African Studies, SOAS, at University of London, and 2 master's degrees from the University of Vienna. He's the author of 5 books, including Islam, Science Fiction, and Extraterrestrial Life. He is which I know actually, well, it's a fascinating book. He's currently writing a book about the history of teaching science with science fiction. So, Dr. Dettermann, floor is yours.
Assalamu alaikum, and peace be upon you. Like these words, obviously, Muslims would use every day, all the time, at any time, but the wishes for peace seem to be especially important during these times. I'm talking to you from Doha, Qatar, where a lot of people are desperately hoping that the current ceasefire will last and that it will transform, hopefully, inshallah, into a true peace. I'm so happy to be part of this conference. Thank you for allowing me to participate virtually. It feels truly for me to be part of a global conversation and to be part of doing global Islamic studies with me and other people being connected to Fairfax, Virginia via the internet. So I'm very, very happy to be part of this panel on cultural production. So I will talk now more about a phenomenon in culture, literary culture, also visual culture, architecture, so futurism specifically, more than futures in general. And I would like to start with some architecture. So the building here in the background is the Muka'ab, which has been described as a Kaaba-like cube that is one of many futuristic projects currently underway in Saudi Arabia and in the wider Gulf states. This project is not yet completed, but it has already drawn controversy. Critics have called it a Kaaba of capitalism. And it is certainly not the only large mega project that is associated with capitalism under the current Saudi government under King Salman and his crown prince, Mohammed bin Salman. There's also a city of gaming called Qiddiya, a building, a city that's part of the larger city of Riyadh, which is less clearly Islamic and more science fiction-y. So this kind of aesthetic I would describe as like perhaps Tokyo Noir, as related to Blade Runner. And Mohammed bin Salman, he has been described as a gamer and as a fan of Blade Runner in particular. So you can see here these neon lights and so on. Perhaps it's a little bit brighter, just like Riyadh as a city is very, very bright, even if one imagines it to be noir. This is from a YouTube video announcing the city of Qiddiya, so it has not been built either. Right now, there is a big question mark over some of these futuristic mega projects, especially given the economic impact of the war. Nonetheless, these projects are part of a longer vision 2030 in Saudi Arabia to move the country away from a reliance on oil, and thus perhaps also move away from a reliance on the Strait of Hormuz as that primary conduit of Saudi oil, and as part of a move towards a knowledge economy. So as part of the impact of this war, these kinds of projects to create an economy based on knowledge or based on entertainment, tourism, gaming, and so on, they might actually receive a boost, and they're certainly worth watching. In the rendering itself, there's the statement here: experience the best of Arab futurism. So I actually wonder who the designer of this particular rendering is, because it seems that they have at least some superficial knowledge, at the very least, of debate surrounding various kinds of futurisms in the Muslim world, Arab futurism being one of them. These debates surrounding different kind of futurisms go back for at least 2 decades, and they extend beyond Saudi Arabia, also like to neighboring countries such as Qatar. There's a Qatari American artist, Sophia Al-Maria, who is said to have coined the term Gulf futurism in a series of essays from 2008 on the gaze of sci-fi Wahhabi. So here you have the combination of science fiction with Wahhabism, of course, the dominant religious current within Saudi Arabia. Sophia and Maria is part of a whole movement of artists who've explored this term, Gulf futurism, the avant-garde culture of the Middle East, but also the connections to capitalism, and of course countries like Saudi Arabia and Qatar, due to their natural resources, are very much at the part of the global capitalist system, and of course an important part of the global economy, hence the impact of the war that is regional on people worldwide. Now, futurism, is this then a particular sort of Gulf phenomenon? Certainly when you fly to the Gulf, you can often see these kinds of futuristic skylines, right? Dubai has long branded itself as a city of the future. However, futuristic thinking has also existed in places that were much poorer and much less central to global capitalism, including places like Damascus, where people for decades lived under sanctions and were thus excluded from a lot of the formal financial mechanisms. And yet we can also find their futuristic art. There's a series of collages called Damascus Under Siege by a Syrian artist called Ayham Jabr, where he worked through his experience of the Civil War by combining images of Damascus with flying saucers. And he is, of course, part of a huge sort of artistic movement in Syria, coming out of Syria, even during the very difficult conditions of a civil war that lasted almost 15 years. Interestingly, in Syria, futurism has not just been the product of individual artists, but just like in Saudi Arabia, we can also find a lot of state-sponsored science fiction. Not necessarily architectural mega projects, for which the Syrian state, of course, lacked the resources, but certainly promotion of science fiction magazines, science fiction on television, and so on. That continued even during the difficult years of war. So this is, for instance, a Syrian science fiction magazine, Al-Khayal Al-Ilmi, Syrian science fiction novel, Al-Azman Al-Mudlimat, Dark Times by Talib Amran, another scientific magazine, Al-Adab Al-Ilmi. These look like commercial magazines, very colorful, but they're in fact sponsored by state organizations, so either the Ministry of Culture or, for instance, Damascus University, where Talib Umran, the science fiction author, worked for decades. And sort of maybe that sort of brings us to the question: why do we have Middle Eastern states from Saudi Arabia all the way to Syria sponsoring this kind of futuristic thinking, futuristic imagining? In the last discussion, somebody brought up the issue of critical thinking. And of course, neither the Syrian government nor the Saudi government is particularly known for encouraging critical thinking, right? Both the Saudi government and the Syrian government, and of course, Emirati governments throughout the region have been very repressive, as diagnosed in like Arab human development reports. So we wonder then sort of if these governments are not necessarily known for encouraging thinking outside of the box, how can we explain this? Also, Saudi Arabia and Qatar in particular have also been known to be quite conservative countries, and the dominant form of Islam in both Saudi Arabia and Qatar, Wahhabism, is also known to be very literalist, very conservative. And there are indeed some conservative scholars who have even issued fatwas criticizing science fiction, including here a fatwa by Muhammad Saleh al-Munajjid, who basically considered science fiction at best, a waste of Muslims' times, and at worst, science fiction being haram, science fiction spreading lies such as Darwin's theory of evolution. So how can we then explain this futuristic interest of, let's say, the Saudi state? Is this just about Mohammed bin Salman being a gamer and being interested in Blade Runner and so on? Or is there something larger? There is nothing unusual about authoritarian states about developing visions of the future. In the whole Eastern Bloc, led by the Soviet Union, there was a great promotion of science fiction, whether in the form of literature or film, with films, some of which were even exported to Western countries. Just because sort of your country is not necessarily known for having a very open education system, doesn't mean the state is not necessarily having its own utopianism and promoting its own vision of possible futures. And hence, right, if we look at another very, very repressive state, we can also see almost a flourishing of science fiction. There's Tehran 1500 here being in the Iranian calendar. So that's Tehran in the 22nd century, where you have a futuristic city with still some Islamic elements. So here you have even a female robot wearing a hijab. Iran has already a more mature gaming industry, a video gaming industry, than what Saudi Arabia is now currently building. There are Iranian video games such as Osman Dej, Do, Sky Fortress 2, where you have a lot of like language elements of global science fiction. But if you notice here, the female characters also have their hair covered. So the mandatory hijab here existing in the video game sphere as well, as promoted by the Iranian government. And just like a lot of Iranian films, also these Iranian video games receive some kind of state support, patronage. If we also go back further in time, we can see elements where repression even encouraged science fiction. There's a theater play from the 1950s from Egypt called Huriya min al-Marikh, where where a man wished that God would send him an ideal woman, and God complies and sort of sends him a Huriya min al-Jannah, paradise virgin. Of course, it goes terribly wrong from there. But when this theater play was initially submitted to censors under the title Huriya min al-Jannah, Virgin from Paradise, Egyptian censors at the time found this blasphemous, so they actually asked for the changing of the title to Huriya min al-Marikh, a virgin from Mars. So it was more palatable, more acceptable to have this have the Huriya come from Mars rather than from Paradise. And the Egyptian state obviously also has been very, very repressive for much of the 20th century. Repressive, for instance, of Islamists. But yet we have lots of science fiction works, including The Fifth Dimension, Al-Bu'd al-Khamis by Ahmed Ra'id, for instance, a play that was written in a Nasserist prison. And again, it was perhaps more possible to write about a different planet, a different time, rather than the here and now, if one wanted to be critical about political circumstances.
And a 2-minute warning, please, Dr. Dettermann.
Perfect, wonderful. Thank you. So what about Islam itself? What about Wahhabism? Also, Islam has been very encouraging of the ideas of the idea of more than one world existing. So even a literal Saudi translation of the Quran would have an explanation of God caring for more than one world, Alameen. There's also the idea that there would be many creatures scattered through heavens. This is also an idea that's shared by movements very, very distant from Wahhabism, so including the Ahmadiyya Muslim community, where you had extraterrestrial life being extensively discussed by leaders. So as a result, if Islam has been very, very encouraging of the idea of multiple worlds and alien life, where you can even find Islamic UFO religions, including the Nation of Islam in America, that has also lived under repressive circumstances. Or in Turkey, we have now Islamic science fiction, not just Arab science fiction and Arabic science fiction, but Islamic science fiction flourishing. And to come back to to cyberspace and to Instagram and generative intelligence, there is now Islamic futurism flourishing on all kinds of sites. This is an Instagram account called muslim.futures. So to conclude here, we have perhaps not just one futurism, but many different kinds of futurisms. In the broader Muslim world, we have bottom-up futurisms from individual artists, as well as top-down futurisms and utopianisms led by government. This science fiction has emerged not despite sort of authoritarianism, but even under the most repressive circumstances. It has emerged and flourished not just despite Wahhabism and conservatism and religious literalism, but some of the literal interpretations of the Quran have even supported central ideas of science fiction, like the idea of alien life, the idea of there being multiple worlds. So as a result, whatever happens now with the region, with the war, what happens to Mohammed bin Salman and his particular projects, science fiction and futurism are firmly established. And we're in the Muslim world, and we can be very excited about future projects coming out of there. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Take questions at the end, of course. So moving on quickly, our next presenter is Dr. Delia Cortese. Okay, she is a senior research fellow at Middlesex University, London. Main areas of research are medieval Islam, Ismaili, particularly Fatimid and Nizari studies, as well as Ismaili codicology. She's the author of several books, including most recently The Fatimids, Portrait of a Dynasty. London Reaction Books was the publisher, and also published with, co-authored that book, Women and the Fatimids in the World of Islam, from several years ago. So thank you, Dr. Cortese, and the floor is yours.
Well, I take this space while my slides go up on the screen to say thank you for the wonderful hospitality, the wonderful opportunity to share such an amazing platform to talk about futures imagined and others. I have all sorts of ideas now coming into my mind, and I hope to have the space to share with you some of the thoughts that this conference has brought. Tremendous help from the staff. Thank you very much for for making this happen. How do I move the slides? Just press down the arrow. Sorry. Okay. As you can see, I have ruined a masterpiece of Islamic art by adding a mobile phone to this miniature. These are the wonders of AI, a wonderful invention that now becomes trivialized by using it for such, sorts of silly things. But anyway, building on the final chapter of my latest book, The Fatimids: Portrait of a Dynasty, where I examine representations of the Fatimids in fiction and the digital sphere, this paper investigates how the Fatimids' past is represented, circulated, and reimagined across contemporary social media platforms, notably Facebook and TikTok. Addressing images and imaginations of Islamic history, it explores how their mediation in the digital age reshapes religious identity, memory discourses, and forms of theological and sectarian differentiation. The paper conceptualizes online users as citizen curators who engage in bottom-up processes of cultural transmission, rescuing and reframing Fatimid history beyond institutional elite narratives. Drawing on a multimodal digital ethnography, in this paper, I share some observation on how users create, remix, and circulate visual and textual content to document and disassemble and reassemble Islamic history. Fatimid art, architecture, ritual, language, and the literary references emerge as a niche but a recurring semiotic theme through which the past is rendered accessible, affective, and shareable. Unlike much scholarship on Arab Islamic digital culture that privileges political activism, this paper foregrounds everyday practices of cultural reflection and identity management. It argues that the social media platforms function as participatory spaces in which historical knowledge is not merely consumed, but collaboratively produced, negotiated, and branded. Through these practices, the Fatimid past is brought back into the present as a resource for belonging, social cohesion, and the reshaping of transnational and sectarian identities. Who were the Fatimids? Here, these maps are drawn from a variety of social media, and you can see that detractors or fans of the Fatimids see the sides of the empire according to their view. From a confessional standpoint, the Fatimid dynasty emerged from a minority within a minority, the Ismaili Shia. The dynasty was founded in 909 in present-day Tunisia by Abdallah, who, with the title of Al-Mahdi, was recognized by most Ismailis as the first Fatimid Imam Caliph. For their supporters, the legitimacy of the Fatimid rulers rested on a dual foundation: descent from the Prophet Muhammad through his daughter Fatima and her husband Ali, Muhammad's cousin and first Imam. But also the belief on the infallibility of the Imam. Here is a bit, a summary of the chronology that you can look for yourself. So from Cairo, from the North African base, the Fatimids expanded eastwards, conquering Egypt and founding Cairo in 969. From Cairo, the Fatimids governed a vast heterogeneous empire encompassing North Africa and Sicily, Egypt, parts of Syria and Palestine, and parts of the Arabian Peninsula. The Fatimid period is often been described as integral part of the so-called Golden Age of Islamic history. The dynasty ultimately came to an end in 1171 when the Sunni Salah ad-Din abolished the Fatimid Caliphate and founded the Ayyubid dynasty. Yet for the Fatimid period, left a deep and lasting imprint on Islamic political thought, religious institutions, and material culture. This imprint has found its way in the realm of social media. today. Building of Gary Boon's pioneering work, recent scholarship in Arabic and Islamic studies has implicitly examined how Islam and Islamic history are mediated, interpreted, and lived through digital platforms, providing an essential framework for analyzing the social media afterlives of, in this case, the Fatimids. A growing body of empirical research has examined memes, humor, and visual vernacular as a form of religious meaning making. Studies of Islamic memes on platforms such as Reddit and Instagram demonstrate how irony and playfulness operate as tools for pedagogy, community formation, and boundary work. These works legitimize multimodal approaches that treat emojis, hashtag, and remix practices as analytically significant semiotic compositions rather than as trivial ephemera. To my knowledge, so far, no investigation has been conducted specifically on the representation of the Fatimids in social media. In Gary Boon's recent Islamic algorithms, chapter 6 comes close in that it is dedicated to how the Shia Ahlul Bayt and the Imamates resonate in cyberspace through the present day. One section of the chapter is devoted to the Ismailis, where the Fatimids are mentioned. While not focused on digital media, scholarship on the reception of Fatimid and Ismaili history provide an essential longue durée perspective of how the Fatimid memory has been reclaimed and reactivated to serve contemporary identity projects. You can see there is a paradigm of this link, Ismaili, Fatimid, Caliphate, Aga Khan, all put in one title. Together, these studies establish the intellectual terrain for examining social media as participatory space in which Islamic history, including the Fatimid past, is continually reinterpreted through everyday acts of digital cultural production. I'll give you just to have a glance at the research questions. I'm not reading them, just have a broad look at it. And then I'm going to look at the Fatimids on Facebook. Okay, so very briefly, I'll jump here. Hey. Well, this is how the caliphates are compared. You know, this is some imaginative way of, you know, the masks. Contemporary Facebook discussions of the Fatimid. One important thing, the spellings are not mine. I have quoted, the comments, okay? Contemporary Facebook discussions of the Fatimid Caliphate can be analytically described as a form of popular digitally mediated historiography. Rather than constituting an extension of scholarly debate, these discussions operate within the distinct epistemic framework that privileges accessibility and contemporary relevance over critical source analysis or historiographical reflexivity. At a foundational level, such discourse falls within the domain of vernacular or public history. Historical narratives about the Fatimids on Facebook are typically produced by enthusiast activists or identity communities, and are circulated through posts, comment threads, and visual media. For example, short posts celebrating the founding of Cairo or the establishment of the Al-Azhar Mosque often present simplified narratives of enlightened governance or cultural fluorescence with little reference to primary sources, internal Fatimid debates, etc. A defining feature of this vernacular historiography is presentism. Fatimid history is frequently interpreted through the lens of modern political and ideological concerns, particularly contemporary Sunni-Shia relations, post-colonial critiques, or modern Middle Eastern state politics. For instance, Facebook discussions may portray the Fatimids as proto-anti-imperialist rulers resisting Abbasid domination, interpretations that project modern sectarian and political frameworks onto a vastly different medieval landscape. Closely related to the identity-based and sectarian framing that dominates many online discussions, Fatimid history is frequently mobilized as a resource for contemporary identity construction, idealized as a Shi'i golden age by some users, dismissed as illegitimate or heretical by others, or selectively reclaimed through nationalist and cultural lenses. This constitutes confessional historiography, where historical interpretation serves present-day communal or ideological affirmation rather than a critical inquiry. For example, debates over Al-Azhar's mosque Shi'i origins often function less as historical investigation than as a symbolic contestation of religious authority in the modern world. These narratives are further shaped by selective canonization and cherry picking. Facebook discourses tend to rely on narrow corpus of highly recognizable symbols, such as Al-Azhar Mosque, the walls of Cairo, a number of anecdotes, such as those relating to the Imam Khalifat Hakim, a controversial figure, while neglecting less visually or rhetorically appealing evidence, such as administrative documents, legal practices, and provincial governance, etc. There is a reason for that, and I'll come to it in a minute. The emphasis on visual cultures also contributes to an aestheticization of history. Fatimid art and architecture are commonly presented in romanticized terms, celebrating geometric harmony, ornamentation, the Islamic splendor, while ignoring questions of patronage, labor, theological symbolism, or economic extraction. For example, images of Fatimid era mosque may be shared as timeless expressions of tolerance and cosmopolitanism without considering of how architecture functioned as a tool of Ismaili dawah or caliphal authority. Within this environment, historical interpretation oscillates between myth-making and counter-myth-making. On the one hand, the Fatimids are mythologized as uniquely tolerant, specifically advanced or proto-modern rulers. On the other hand, they are depicted as oppressive, conspiratorial, and doctrinally deviant. Both narratives reduce complex scholarly debates into binary moral frameworks, replacing historical contingencies with simplified evaluative judgments. Nuanced or neutral discussions of the Fatimid governance, internal dissent, or regional variance rarely gain any traction in such polarized spaces. These tendencies are intensified by algorithmic simplification and memification. Facebook platform dynamics reward emotionally charged content repetition and visually striking posts, encouraging the circulation of simplified claims and provocative interpretations. More sharing equal more visibility equal more marketing by advertising, etc. So neutrality is not good, because there are market forces that sustain this polarization. As a result, certain images and slogans or narratives about the Fatimids recur across pages and groups, producing a meme-like historiography that prioritizes engagement with metrics over cumulative knowledge building. TikTok representation of the Fatimid dynasty is characterized by the affordance of and constraints of short form videos, algorithmic visibility, and contemporary identity politics that are emotionally resonant, visually compelling, and ideologically legible to present audiences. TikTok's logic of platformization and algorithmic historiography encourages brevity and narrative clarity. Complex historiographical processes are compressed into easily consumable and digestible tropes. Videos often frame the Fatimids as forgotten caliphate, the Shi'i empire that was erased by the Sunnis, the lost Islamic golden age, etc. Fatimid history on TikTok frequently operates as counter-canonical memory production. In a Foucauldian sense, creators mobilize the Fatimids as a form of counter-memory, presenting them as an intentionally marginalized and suppressed civilization. Like with Facebook, another feature is aestheticization of the Fatimid past, often bordering on neo-Orientalism. TikTok creators rely on heavily evocative visuals, sweeping shots of the Cairo skylines, digitized manuscript pages, or AI-generated images of luminescent palaces and secretive scholars. TikTok encourages what might be called pseudo-scholarship microlearning. Many videos adopt the visual and the rhetorical markers of expertise, maps, sliding across the screen, dates, Arabic terminology, unnamed sources. However, these facts are rarely accompanied by methodological transparency. Okay, in conclusion, I think this was 4, which I jumped. Okay. Discourses embedding the Fatimids in digital Islamic contexts have multiple, sometimes competing agendas. They may support educational aims, sectarian identity formation, heritage promotion, or ideological positioning, while simultaneously participating in broader dynamics of attention economy and personal branding. The figure of the Fatimid becomes a flexible digital signifier, a brand that can signal tolerance, intellectual flourishing, and cultural sophistication, but also that can be simplified, sensationalized, and instrumentalized. The process of befriending the Fatimids online through hashtag influencers and community interactions creates emotional proximity to the past, encouraging users to engage with history not as a distant scholarship, but as a lived shareable experience. In strictly Ismaili context, the representation of the Fatimids are part of the Ismaili Dawoodi Bohra self-image, as they see themselves as the natural continuators of Fatimid Ismailism. The Bohras have a high level of cyber networking with the activities of the Dai Mutlaq and the Bohra network in the Indian subcontinent and the international context widely represented. As for the Nizar Ismailis, the connectiveness of the institutions established and promoted by the Aga Khan, by the third, fourth, and fifth Aga Khan, fits effectively into online discourses of and networking with a long-term internet presence, proving the effectiveness of online communication. In Nizari context, the relatively recent rediscovery and reclaiming of the Fatimids past is played out and harnessed, among other various means, via online representation and social media discourses. Yes. Digital media offer immersive and boundary flexible pedagogical opportunities to illuminate contemporary uses and reconstructions of the past while attracting new and diverse audiences to historical debate. At the same time, these platforms shape how the Fatimids are remembered and understood. While social media narratives often highlight the themes such as inclusivity, intellectualism, gender issues, and artistic patronage, they can also reproduce persistent tropes: sectarian, otherness, esoteric secrecy, the figure of the Mad Caliph, or images of excess and decadence. Debates on the opportunities and challenges posed by social media as tools for engaging with Islamic history are now central to digital historical studies. As a case study examining how the Fatimids are branded and befriended online showcases the need to take Islamic histories seriously within the digital public culture. Exploring the social and media afterlife of the Fatimids allows us to assess how historical narratives are shaped by platform logics, marketing, users' interactions, and affective economics, and how these processes influence contemporary understanding of the Islamic past beyond the confines of academia, now and for the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Okay, Dr. Anderson. Next, we have Dr. Glaire Anderson. She's a senior lecturer in Islamic art in the School of History of Art and founding director of the Digital Lab for Islamic Visual Culture and Collections and deputy director of the History and Games Lab Research Center at the University of Edinburgh. Her second book, A Bridge to the Sky, The Arts of Science in the Age of Abbas ibn Firnas, was published by Oxford in 2024.
Thank you so much for that introduction. Thank you for the invitation to be here. I have been so enjoying learning with you and learning from you, and really happy to share my recent work with you. So video games have emerged as one of the most significant ways in which the public engages with the past. Many scholars have argued for the educational value of games in making knowledge accessible and informing public perceptions of the past, including cultural heritage. So today I'd like to share my work with the video games industry for public impact. I'm going to be speaking specifically about my consultancy and collaboration with the video game publisher Ubisoft. I'll be sharing my work as an external historian and art historian on Assassin's Creed Mirage. Its narrative, set in 9th century Baghdad, the game's virtual environment offers an example of how video games can use digital visualization to make Islamic art, architecture, history, and cultural heritage widely visible and hopefully widely accessible. As I hope to show, video games are a powerful medium to help wide public audiences understand and appreciate global history and global Islamic art, global Islamic history, perhaps especially when buildings and other cultural heritage sites no longer exist, or when they can't be visited, viewed, or experienced in real life. So one of the few and arguably the best known video games to depict medieval Islamic historical urban spaces and architecture was Assassin's Creed, which was released by Ubisoft in 2007. Set in Damascus and other cities in the medieval Islamic lands, this game launched what is now one of the most recognized video game franchises, combining inspiration from places and times ranging from Damascus and other Middle Eastern cities during the medieval period to ancient Greece and Egypt more recently, to Renaissance Italy, to Viking Age Britain, to Victorian London, just to name a few of the historical settings it has combined with its signature science fiction and fantasy themes. So I worked with Ubisoft on Assassin's Creed Mirage, which was released in 2023. And as I said, the narrative of the game is set in 9th century Baghdad. So in creating the Assassin's Creed Mirage game world, Ubisoft's world design teams definitely faced an extreme challenge in visualizing the game's built environment. And this is, of course, because we have virtually no physical remains from 9th century Baghdad. So since the Assassin's Creed franchise is best known for the time and attention to historical authenticity that it places in representing architecture and urban environments representing 9th century Baghdad, to put it mildly, was a very steep order. But I think it was an important project in terms of educating wide public audiences about Islamic art, architecture, and history of the period. And that's where I tried to help their creative teams understand architecture, art, and history of the 9th century and more generally of the Caliphal period. So basically my team and I spent several months training their world design directors, basically giving a seminar in art in the age of the caliphs and architecture in the age of the caliphs. And this is what they ultimately created. This is what I normally teach students when I'm teaching Abbasid Baghdad and the Round City. And this is what Ubisoft's creative teams eventually ended up creating. So they created a game world that is fantasy, but that does indeed feel in many ways believable in terms of being full of life, full of human activity, and stories that make the architecture in urban spaces come to life. And though it was widely publicized that Baghdad, as imagined in this game, is so historically accurate that it made an Islamic historian cry, I'm sorry to tell you that it is not, in fact, historically accurate. Certainly not in the way that as historians, or as an architectural historian or an art historian, certainly not in the way that I think of or understand the term. Right, so Baghdad as presented in Assassin's Creed Mirage is striking. It's visually striking. It can be breathtaking at times. It's also completely fantastical. This is a Baghdad that never was. It actually evokes a plethora of other times and places well beyond Baghdad and well beyond the Caliphal age. So as they walk through the round city, players may encounter elements, for instance, that are reminiscent of medieval gates and fountains, say from Almohad or Almoravid, North Africa, or from early modern, say Safavid Iranian bazaars and mosques, or domed tombs from South and Central Asia, just to name a few. So scholars may be disappointed, dismayed even at these liberties that have been taken. And I have to say, I certainly was as well. But to my mind, though, the absence of remains from the 9th century, which is the period that they were trying to visualize through their narrative, the absence of remains from Baghdad at that time represented, I think, the creative director and the creative teams an opportunity to showcase the riches of Islamic architecture across space and across time. So when I look at, game world environment and scenes like this, I have two different reactions depending what hat I'm wearing at the time. So when I look at individual architectural elements, this is often quite jarring because I can see that many of them are not authentic to the 9th century, but are actually references, as I said, to Islamic architecture of other times and other places. So as a historian of the Caliphal period, I find that quite jarring, even if what they've done, I also think is quite visually spectacular. But at the same time, if I look with a different hat on or a different set of lenses, I think that what they've done has a significance that goes beyond my desire to see the 9th century or the art and architecture of the Caliphal period represented in a historically accurate or historically authentic way. I think this goes beyond that. This is a video game that's going to bring, that has brought by now, an unfamiliar artistic tradition for many, and an unfamiliar history for many still. It's going to bring that to many, many players around the globe. At this point, it surpassed 10 million players in the fall. And I think what they've created here is an homage to the entire extent of Islamic architecture. So if I don't look at it from a strictly scholarly perspective, I think that's very exciting, and I think that's very commendable. Indeed, I think what it reminds me of is maybe a parallel to Shahzad Bashir's innovative digital book, A New Vision for Islamic Pasts and Futures, which was published in 2022, so a year before Mirage appeared. Bashir's concept of Islam, as he defined it in the book, is, quote, a jumble of practices and ideas present in the world we encounter, whose plasticity has allowed it to be molded and manipulated into an endless variety of forms in human situations the world over for centuries, end quote. And if you haven't explored Bashir's wonderfully innovative book, I really recommend it to you. There are lots of reasons, of course, why people don't know the architecture of global Islamic civilization. Survival of evidence is certainly one of those reasons. And you can't think about that, certainly you can't think about that in this particular moment, without thinking about broader histories of imperialism, colonialism, and warfare. And it's much harder, I think, for people in some ways to connect with history when they don't have tangible cultural heritage still standing, when art and architecture of Islamic civilization is not generally taught in school curricula. And so for me, the video game as a medium makes it possible for people to begin to understand what we've lost, how much we've lost. And I think this is so very important for public impact as a way of introducing people to unfamiliar histories, unfamiliar cultural heritage, unfamiliar traditions of visual culture. So in addition to the architecture and the urban environment that you can explore in this game world, there's also the educational feature that my team and I co-created with Ubisoft's in-house world design director and historian to be part of the game. So this is the in-game codex, the history of Baghdad, which is to all purposes actually a very traditional museum exhibition that's built into the game with written entries like museum labels illustrated by period monuments, period objects, and period manuscripts, which were suggested by me and my team. So I'll see if you can get a sense of the gameplay here so you can see how you encounter this educational codex while you're playing the game. So you encounter that, and then what pops up is the museum exhibition text, basically, that we wrote or co-wrote with the historian or edited, accompanied in this case by a manuscript, but otherwise by an object, specific objects from museum collections, specific manuscripts, specific works of art and architecture from the Caliphal period that my team and I selected, presented to their team, and which their team of in-house or their in-house historian then ultimately selected to appear. And if you notice in that image, something that means a lot to me is that we included the museum, the collection information, so that players who are playing the game, if they are interested to learn more, say about the Banu Musa and that particular manuscript or whatever it is that's depicted in the codex, that they can go and they can find that object, they can find that work, they can continue their exploration of the actual objects and art and history of the period. I'd like to also point out that this, when you're looking at this interior here, that the game's visualizations offer players a chance to imagine and experience architectural interiors with furnishings and objects. And while we could certainly critique the ahistorical aspects of these interiors as scholars, the visualization itself is nevertheless, I think, a huge contribution to experiencing histories of Islamic art and architecture in an embodied way. Because normally, of course, when we go to the museum, we experience objects, textiles, furnishings in glass vitrines, completely decontextualized from their architectural surroundings and contexts of use. So I will just wrap up by saying, you know, if the decision had lain with me, I would have conceptualized Baghdad in a way that's much closer to the archaeological evidence that we do have for 9th century Iraq. And that is an approach that you see here in this concept art for the game. So even people who don't play the game might still see some accurate historical representation of period architecture. But if you do play the game, there are many examples of tangible cultural heritage that have been visualized and that appear in the game's environment. This is one of my favorites. So it's a tiny detail that you could easily overlook. But if you're familiar with Baghdad and with the traditional watercraft of Iraq, this might stand out as a small detail that really evokes a sense of place. And that's the round watercraft that you see here in the game, the Gufa. And I was very happy to be able to connect the developers to this group, the Safina projects, who are working on the maritime heritage of Iraq. So having those game artists visualize these elements and include them in the game environment, I think is just one of many small, but I think important, authentic details that do appear in the game. So alongside the game itself, the public exhibitions that have appeared, that are touring currently, and most importantly, I think the Discovery Tour at Medieval Baghdad is probably the most important outcome of my work on Assassin's Creed Mirage and the Codex. So this app makes the Codex accessible for much more widely accessible for players ages 12 and up, and gives the opportunity to interact with 3D scans of specific objects from, for instance, the Khalili collections. So you can position and manipulate these 3D scans of objects like this 9th century North African astrolabe, for instance, from the Khalili collections, which I think is a wonderful contribution to digital cultural heritage, in which 3D scans of Islamic objects rarely seem to make it into the digitization efforts of our museum and other cultural heritage institutions. So I think the existence of these games, and especially the Discovery Tour, renders medieval Islamic civilization visible and accessible to new and ever widening future audiences. And my hope is this visibility will encourage new and wider viewing publics to learn about and engage with global Islamic art and history as key to global history. So to conclude, I hope to have shown you that video games, as one of the most popular forms of contemporary entertainment, offer a very powerful way to engage wide audiences beyond traditional and academic circles by creating new ways for wide publics to experience and appreciate Muslim and Islamic pasts that no longer survive or that may still be unfamiliar or physically inaccessible. My hope is that this powerful digital medium will inspire a future in which many more people of all ages and walks of life find global Islamic art and histories to be visible and accessible to a far greater extent than has been the case up to now. Thank you. Interested in that work, I invite you to visit my digital labs webpage.
Yeah, wonderful. Thank you. And hopefully we'll have some questions. We do have one final presentation.
Enthusiastic.
Yeah, absolutely. Me too. Yeah. Aisha, are you able to?
Yes,
okay. Okay. So our final presenter, who I think has a video. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay.
She'll be joining online.
Okay, it's joining online. So Dr. Laila Shereen Sakr is an associate professor of film and media studies at UC Santa Barbara. She's also an artist and scholar whose work merges digital media, glitch aesthetics, and critical AI to integrate power, memory, technoculture. Her long-running art media system and exhibitions like Capital Glitch, Disassembling the Cloud, and Rosetta Stone's Resurrected exemplify that kind of work. She is the author, most recently, of a wonderful book that I had the pleasure of reviewing just by chance recently called Arabic Glitch, Technoculture, Data Bodies, and Archives, which was published by Stanford in 2023. So, Dr. Sakr, are you with us? Yes.
Yes, I am here. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you all for having me, and I'm really sorry that I'm not there in person. I'd like to thank the incredible team at the Abu Suleiman Center for Global Islamic Studies and for Dr. Sumaya Hamdani and everybody for putting on this really fantastic and important conference. I'm really delighted to be here, and I'm sorry that I'm not in person. The title of my talk today is Contrapuntal, Arab/Muslim Futurity, Worlds in the Making, Data in the Flesh. To speak of Arab and Muslim futurity today is to confront a paradox that we are living in an era in which artificial intelligence increasingly mediates how reality is seen, remembered, and narrated. Yet the systems that govern this mediation are profoundly unable to register the complexity of the worlds they claim to model. For those of us working in film, interactive media, and AI, this is not an abstract technological shift. It is a transformation of the very conditions of image making. AI has become a planetary apparatus of editing. It curates feeds, ranks, visibility, filters, archives, and governs circulation. It determines not only what appears, but what disappears. And in this sense, AI is not simply a tool. It is an infrastructure. It is a distributed cinematic system, one that reorganizes the grammar of perception itself. Within the Arab and Muslim world, this system does not operate evenly. It appears as a contradiction. In the Arabian Peninsula, artificial intelligence is staged as spectacle, embedded in biennials, cultural initiatives, and cinematic industries that position the region at the forefront of global and technological futures. And many of my colleagues have spoken about this in the last 2 days, from Saudi Arabia's 2030 project to the Diriyah Art Futures Institution, and so on and so forth. In Palestine and other militarized geographies, AI appears instead as infrastructure of violence, machine vision systems, biometric tracking, predictive targeting, and algorithmic moderation that renders life as data to be controlled or erased. And these are not separate trajectories, but structurally entangled formations. As I argue elsewhere, AI in the Arab world must be understood as a political medium that simultaneously produces visibility and enforces disappearance, shaping whose lives are rendered legible and whose histories are suppressed. The crisis, then, is not only one of representation. It is a crisis of media ontology, of what can be seen, what can be known, and what can be remembered. And this image here you see is a network visualization of 2 million posts on Mahsa Amini in 2022 that I recreated artistically to look like a woman with her hair blowing. The red lines are tweet posts in Persian, in Farsi, sorry, and the white ones are in English, and the green ones are in French. The past 2 years have made this condition of contradiction starkly visible. And in Gaza, we have witnessed what we call a live-streamed genocide, where Palestinians have documented their own survival in real time, transforming phones into cameras of testimony and platforms into infrastructures of witnessing. Yet this unprecedented visibility has been accompanied by systemic suppression. Posts are removed, streams interrupted, accounts shadow banned, and the archive is produced and erased simultaneously. And here, AI functions not only as a medium of circulation, but as a regime of disappearance. The data body, which is something I conceive of in my work, which I argue are the traces that we leave across networks. They are also the records that institutions keep on us, like our GPA scores to get us in and out of universities, our health records, our citizenship records, our driving records. All of these give us entry or deny us entry into various systems of our lives. So these data bodies, as I propose, they become sites of struggle. They're caught between documentation and deletion, between memory and erasure. And this image of this network visualization are what I call data bodies of what 2 million people posted on the hashtag Mahsa Amini in 2022. So today I'm going to talk about, give you a little roadmap of my talk. I'm situating the three cultural productions that I'm working on right now. One is an AI system called Contrapuntal. The other is an experimental film. And the third is a video game called Data Bodies. Now, the problem that my work is trying to address is the problem that AI flattens context. And where we see patterns does not mean that we are finding meaning. Where we see language, where we're analyzing language does not give us history. And in fact, what we do in the humanities is often to contextualize stories. So the work we do in the humanities is to provide the history, is to provide the interpretive meaning and the citational meaning beyond just pattern recognition. Also, that global data, what we call global data, is uneven, it's multilingual, and it's structured by numerous layers of power. And therefore, the idea that the data body has so much power over our lives is dangerous because data is not our life. The methods I use are three separate methods. One is glitch, which I'll talk about in a moment, reading against systems against the grain. The other is contrapuntal, which I take from Edward Said's book, where he mentions it in his book, Cultural Imperialism. Contrapuntal is holding multiple histories in relationship with each other, histories that contradict, histories that are layered, where there's one dominant history, but the ones that are dominated hold up the dominated history. And so you have this idea of layered paradoxical histories that sit together. When I say histories, I mean how histories are narrated and by whom. So the research question I come to is, how would we build AI? How would we imagine AI, which is all future systems, for all image making systems? How would we build it differently? If it's not predictive, how could we build AI via relational mechanisms of memory and interpretation? And this is the challenge I'm posing myself, because I'll give you a little example. During my time working with Archive. Archive is a digital archive that I began in 2009, where we were archiving social media, primarily Twitter, for over 15 years. It became an archive of 80 billion posts in 72 languages, in which I produced multiple art installations. And in addition, we started building in 2012 a tiny little machine learning software in Arabic. We used Wikipedia in Arabic to try to create it such the tool would be that you start writing in Arabic and then the tool would finish your sentence. It was a really large project and didn't quite come together. In addition, we were doing a lot of data analytics, natural language processing on this corpus of data. And in 2012, we were trying to do sentiment analysis on the Egyptian elections at the time. This was before Sisi. And I did this large analysis and came to the conclusion that Murtada Mansour, who was running for office, was the most popular. Even though he had the fewest number of posts, he was the most, he got all positive tweets. And I went to Egypt, presented this, and I realized as I was presenting and everyone started laughing, realized that Murtada Mansour was sort of being made fun of, and my tool was unable to recognize sarcasm in the tweets. And this was a fundamental failure of the system and made me go back to the drawing board. These methodological commitments of mine form across three interrelated ideas. One is the contrapuntal, second is the glitch, and the third is futurism, futurity, which I'd like to flesh out today. And that's what really sort of where I imagine, and through the work of the cultural production work, where we see that. So central to this approach is the concept of glitch. In my earlier work, I argued that glitch is not merely a technical error, but a revelatory moment, an exposure of the system's underlying assumptions in the context of AI. The glitch has migrated inward. It no longer appears at the surface of media, but within the data sets, models, and the infrastructures themselves. Bias, misrecognition, hallucination, and erasure are not failures external to the system. They are symptoms of its design. And for artists and media practitioners, glitch becomes a method, a way of reading systems against the grain and an intervening in their logic. It is an aesthetic of rupture that makes visible what AI is structured to conceal. The three interventions I make in the book is that glitch is a method, data, that there's no virtual or real divide. And I argue that around the concept of the data body, and that for us to make any change, we need procedural literacy at large for the general public.
And
the idea that
we're at 5 minutes here, I'm sorry.
Okay, sure. So this point of contrapuntal, where we have multiple histories in relation without resolution, I show in this one example a capital glitch where I have, it's a 30-foot wall you see here. There's a day version, a night version of the capital. The day version is made up of 6,200 images from Parler, which is the right-wing platform. And then the night version is made up of 6,200 images in Twitter. So you have, again, two different stories of the same moment without resolution. I'll skip the Arab futurism part for the sake of time, but just to say that these works resonate with and extend a broader period of Arab futuristic practice. Here, Larissa Sansur explores speculative futures of means confronting dispossession and reimagining sovereignty. Similarly, artists across the region and its diaspora, Hiba Amin, Monira Qadiri, Wafa Bilal, and others engage digital media as a site where histories of surveillance, extraction, and resistance are reworked. And so to get to the three different productions that I'm working on here, Contrapuntal AI is here it is, it's a prototype in place. Just Okay, it is a human AI collaborative platform where you can go in. It's a social networking site where you create, you go in here and you're able to create data sets, go into these different data sources. You're able to also use other data sources. You can use the archive's historic data of 80 billion tweets. And then the new contrapuntal system does an automatic visualization for you and create citational lineage. We use small language models. There's a bias evaluation tool that we built using with the network of women in the network of Arab women in AI. We was involved with a 2-year research project, and where we were understanding what the research question was, what is a feminist data set? And what is an Arabic feminist data set? And we went through a series of Arabic data sets to realize that very few of this data sets in Arabic were feminist data sets. And we used 7 principles from a book called Data Feminism by Lauren Klein and Catherine D'Ignazio. And it was a very interesting process. So we created a bias evaluation tool so you can actually evaluate the different bias levels in a variety of data sets. It's built through participatory design, this shared governance model. You create your own profile, but you can also follow other people's, and you can see here trending data sets. The second project is an experimental film called Reality AI, where you play it's from a first person perspective. We're 2211, 200 years after post-Arab Spring. You play as a cyborgian historian in a world where the AI controls our reality, and you are to determine what is created by the computer's computational systems and what is actually the history from the past. And you actually, as a cyborg historian, you travel through this new world, and you learn about the 20th and the 21st century in the Middle East. It's centered where the Middle East is the center of the world. And this will be exhibited in an installation and multiple screens. So you'll have like 1, 2, 3 screens, and you have to walk around this disjuncted contrapuntal reality film. Here is the video. What the film does. I know you can't hear the sound, but it is a montage of real archives. I use my archives from Archive to build this tool, to build this film. Sorry, I'm going to fast forward through it. Here we go. Glitch breaks the narrative, and the memory refuses erasure. And here you have little bit scenes of this futuristic world. Okay. And finally is this game, which I really wish you could hear the sound. I created, all the sound is made by myself mainly, and along with a team of others. We started building this world data bodies. That is we were building it based on the library in Gaza. And that is what you see here. The scene starts out, you play again in this world where you're trying to, as the cyborgian historian, here you are in the library of Gaza. You go there to find old texts, old histories. The library is falling apart, and you need to recover the history of Palestine. And that is the name of the game. So you go to the library falls apart, you are awakened by this bot, and the bot then takes you to, tells you about the history and tells you, we have to go find these texts, we have to go find all this material, and you go off into this new world. Now, as anybody knows, when you're building a video game, it's a lot of work. We've spent 2 years imagining the world. There's been a lot of work. I can't tell you in 1 minute, but we have built the environment out. Again, we've imagined there are characters, there's a whole world building project. We've got 3 episodes written, full screen game. We're now looking for funders to actually produce it and distribute the film. So I'd like to sort of bring this together. What these projects ultimately suggest is a reframing of how we build AI, how we build digital systems itself from the ground up, from a cultural production angle, rather than understanding AI and digital systems as a system that predicts you from data. We can understand it as a system that organizes or reorganizes relations between images, histories, and subjects. This shift has a profound implication for film and media studies. It positions AI not as an external tool, right, but as an internal component of contemporary media ecologies, one that shapes our narrative, our montage, and our spectatorship at a fundamental level. The question then is not whether AI will shape an Arab and Muslim futures. It already does. The question is what kinds of futures it will make possible and what kinds it will foreclose. A contrapuntal approach insists on keeping this question open. It refuses the closure of singular narratives and instead sustains the tension of multiple worlds in formation. In the end, contrapuntal Arab-Muslim futurity is not a destination. It is a practice. It is the ongoing work of building systems, creating images, and telling stories that hold difference in relation. It is a commitment to preserving memory in the face of erasure, to glitching systems that normalize violence, and to imagining futures that exceed the limits of computation. It is quite literally worlds in the making, data in the flesh. Thank you. I will just like to show you this slide because there's a lot of people always involved.
Oh, sorry. Go. Yeah, okay. We're going to turn to questions if that's okay for the panel. Dr. Sakr. I'm sorry.
Sorry, I wasn't finished, but thank you, Nathaniel. I wasn't done, but okay. Sure. Thanks.
Oh, my apologies. Well, okay, we do have a lot of questions, so let's jump right into it.